know, to try to drown it out. And so maybe our job, maybe the way you want to say it is, we want to find ways to squelch the noise so that people can hear the loud uttering and pouring forth of speech and so forth. Does that make sense? That's kind of what it's kind of what this is about, because it's going to kind of give you a way to do that, and not only equip you maybe to be conversant with this a little bit with people, but also give you assurance. Another consistent with one of the themes here has been you can know that God exists. It's not just a blind faith thing. Again, these verses seem to be saying, as a matter of observation, general revelation, creation is sufficient to demonstrate God's existence. We're without excuse. He's made it plain. Okay, so we're done with that. And now what I want to do is kind of explain what I mean by information. And people play games with this, and like any other word, you know, most English words have a range of meanings. So, and information is no different. But here's what we're talking about when we say information. This is a poem. I'm sure some of you have heard of it, Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. He said to his friend, and this is by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, he said to his friend, if the British marched by land or sea from the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the North Church Tower as a signal light. One if by land and two if by sea, and I on the opposite shore will be, ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk to be up and to arm. All right, well, so Paul Revere needed a way to get a message from across the harbor to him so that he could go and warn the townspeople of the approaching British Army. The vehicle for this information, for this message, were these lanterns, whether there was one or two, whether there was going to be one or two. What Paul Revere and his friend had done is devised a code, a language, a very simple language, to convey a message, and to convey information across the harbor in an instant of time. And it worked, and Paul Revere kind of got a jump on the British Army and beat them to, what was it, Lexington or something. Anyway, you kind of get the idea that this was, and notice that this was information that was coming from Paul Revere's friend's mind to Paul Revere's mind across the harbor with two lanterns. It's kind of strange. But we do this kind of thing all the time. Now, this is an interesting feature. Most of us have seen this here in Bend. We actually have two of them, one at the north end and one at the south end. Isn't that amazing that blind, purposeless natural forces created that topiary? Wow. You ever think about that? That's amazing. What a happy accident that was. Or are you thinking, no, that's not an accident. There was intention behind that. There was design behind that. Why do you reach that conclusion, do you think? There's a couple of reasons, but a big one is the fact that it carries information. Because there, spelled out in the hedge, is the name of the city where this is found. That's pretty important. Now, next stop. How many have an iPod? I suspect that it doesn't actually have to be an iPod. I mean, even if you use a computer, all this really still applies. But an iPod stores instructions for playing music. And those instructions are in what form? Anybody? I know it's kind of a wide open question, but form of a code, would you say? MP3 file or AAC or whatever. Well, any electronic file is, if you could see it, is really just a long string of ones and zeros. And they look like, or they would look, if we could see it again, to us they look completely random. We wouldn't be able to discern any kind of meaning or function in this sea of ones and zeros. It would make no sense. But, of course, we know that the iPod is designed and programmed to understand that code, right? And we also know that the code actually, though it may appear random to us if we could see it, we know that it's not random. If it was random, how would we possibly know what music we were going to listen to next? The sequence is specific. It's important. The sequence of ones and zeros, that is. Now, information of this kind, there it is right there. Isn't that beautiful? Can you hear it? Okay, now information of this kind comes in various forms. One we saw was a topiary, for crying out loud. But as we said, with the topiary and the lanterns, actually, there's an interesting distinction between some of these examples. The topiary and the lanterns carried information from a mind to another mind. But in the case of the iPod, the information is actually not understood by a mind. It's understood by an unintelligent machine, the iPod, that's programmed and so forth to understand what to do with that code. It's good to realize that there is that distinction. I think that what it means is our intelligence, when we're the recipient of the information, our intelligence can mask over spelling errors and stuff like that. I mean, somebody misspells a word, I can usually still read it and know what they meant because it's sort of my intelligence taking over. An iPod can't do that. If there's a mistake in the code, it's not going to work. So there's a little bit of a subtle difference there, but the idea is still basically the same. Now the question might be, what does any of this have to do with the origin of life? And here's a hint. This is a quote from Bernd Olaf Coopers, professor of natural philosophy at University of Jena in Germany. The problem of origin of life is basically equivalent to the problem of the origin of biological information. Basically what this means is the first person to understand where the origin of information, what the origin of information is the person to discover the origin of life. You can't have life without the information that underwrites it. Okay? That's basically the idea. You figure out where the information came from, you figured out the origin of life. Now, we mentioned this, or alluded to this a little bit earlier. You might say, what does this have to do with software? And that brings us to Francis Crick's work in the late 50s, the sequence hypothesis. Basically what he was saying with the sequence hypothesis is that this string of bases inside the DNA molecule, which we'll kind of peek at here in a few minutes, function as alphabetic characters in a written language or digital characters in a machine code. Digital characters in a machine code. What was that one with all the ones and zeros? What was that? Was that not a machine code? That's kind of interesting, isn't it? Now, Francis Crick, just so you know, is not a theist. He's a naturalist. He's not about revealing the creator, okay? That's not his goal in